All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed with Raj and me, your co-hosts. Uh, Today we are going to be previewing the Grizzlies matchup. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody that's joining on the live stream. If you're joining via YouTube, you guys can always jump into the chat, say hi, hello. I know we always get a bunch of regulars that come through, and just make yourself known. And if you have any questions or comments, we'll definitely put them up on the live stream if you're watching that way. If you aren't able to watch this on the live stream, you can always join the space that's at Radio KB. So for the folks that are in the space right now, appreciate you guys joining the space. Hopefully this format sort of works. I don't think we plan on having any visuals on the screen, so you're not really going to be missing out anything in that regard. So it's really just listening to me and Raj blather on about Lakers basketball for about an hour and a half. And so, as always, we appreciate the folks that support, like, share, subscribe. You don't even have to do any of that stuff. Just listening and enjoying Lakers basketball the way that we do is always just something that I think both of us enjoy. So before we start and we get into the Memphis stuff, Raj, let's make sure. I think I've got myself unmuted on my phone so that they can hear us on the space. So I think you might have to make sure that you unmute yourself on your phone so that way they can hear you in the space too as well.
This is like technical stuff. Are you able to mute the space on your phone? I think mine like doesn't go all the way down the audio on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me see if I can unmute you.
No. I can unmute. I mean, like the audio is still coming from the phone, so I'm just wondering.
You probably just turned the volume off on your phone completely.
I did. It doesn't want to turn all the way off. It's like forcing audio through it. So I don't know. We'll figure it out. See if there's
there you go. Now you're good. Now they should be able to hear you. Now you're muted.
All right. Yeah. Let's do it.
Good. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Now you're good. Yeah. I can see you on the phone. It looks like your phone's like either auto muting. Sorry,
no, it's not auto muting. It's just like I'm getting.
This is a test run for us. So we're working through
This is total technicalities.
Yeah,
see
you're
if
good
I
now.
can go out and then come back in.
No, I can see you. I can see you speaking. You're good.
No, I know. It's just your audio is coming from the space, even though I turned the volume off. It's weird.
Oh.
The audio's still coming. Yeah. Is yours not coming through? No
I
audio.
I have the volume turned all the way down. Let's see. Say something.
I see. Okay, so if I'm let me go back. Let me request back up here.
Yeah.
This is a really amazing radio here.
We'll add some time at the end of it.
Wait, so if I'm talking, see the audio still coming, right? To your
so I can hear the audio on the live stream and I can hear the audio through the space. So you're good to go there.
Okay. Sounds good. So there's no kickback coming on the space?
Nope. No kickback at all.
No? Okay, for sure. All right. Then it should work then.
All righty. So we've got it figured out. Sorry for the short delay here. But as I mentioned before, appreciate all the folks joining the space and appreciate the folks that are on the live stream. So Raj, let's just jump into it. Before we jump on the Grizzlies conversation, I really wanted to discuss, I actually wanted to discuss the Minnesota game because that game was a harrowing game. That I was very, very surprised about. I just didn't expect it to go the way that it did. But you and I both discussed sort of like the danger of not taking them seriously. And I'm not surprised that it went down to the wire, but the end of that game, we'll get into the details real quick, but like the end of that game was insane. I thought, and it was just like a matter of like, I don't even know how to describe what was happening. Like I was losing my mind just seeing both teams literally just throw the ball away. And then the end of that that led to overtime. It was bananas. What were your emotions like during that time?
So we were on the playback thing watching it live, and I think, I almost died like 10 times watching that. That was scary, watching Minnesota build a huge lead. D'Lo obviously struggled, and I was Vinay preparing for like a Friday game against New Orleans, or against OKC. That's what I thought, that would, come to. But yeah, it was crazy. Vinay, the first time I thought we could actually win that game, and I posted it, was when LeBron hit that three coming off the screen going left. I thought that was like the first time that we can actually win. But, I think that game is tough. You put the context into it. They played 8 games in 14 days or some crazy amount. 8 must-win games, right, in 14 days. I think what's crazy is like the first round series is like 3 games in like 13 days or some crazy amount. So you get, a huge spread instead of having to play all these must-win games. But no, I think, there's some stuff to take from it. I thought they started, really slow, but I thought that was a high intensity game. And I thought that's like a playoff style game where a lot of these guys, like, they needed to feel that, right? Like, there's a lot of these guys have not felt that type of playoff intensity. And I thought that was a good game to kind of show them, like, okay, this is what it's going to be. Like, all those calls you were getting, all those, like, where you drive in and just throw your arm into a defender, the refs aren't giving you that. There were some like questionable ones there as well, but yeah, I think like that was huge, right? D'Lo, Austin are used to those. Like, you come off the screen, you have the guy in jail, you back up into them, you usually get that call, and they're like, nah, not tonight. Like, we're not giving you anything. And you had to adjust to that. And I thought, you saw who could and couldn't. And I hope they can in Memphis. I think it's going to be even more aggressive with the way that they play. But yeah, that was a stressful game. I said, I think I died 10 times during that. So I think, it's nice to finally get out of there into heaven, as it would say.
Yeah, I thought that game. Everything that was bad the first time around we played them, like, reared itself a second time against them. Like, the bench lineup was really, really bad in the first half, and they just had a bunch of trouble like dealing with that. And then like the physicality, I thought maybe like for Austin, like Austin was trying to get those same calls that he normally gets, and he wasn't getting them, which kind of like you expect it because he's new, right? Like, so he's not going to know like how to deal with the change in calls, and it's very abrupt when something like that happens. But like I thought that even Austin did a really nice job of like still playing his game. Like, he didn't have a great shooting night, but he did hit like some important, like he finished some possessions for us where the ball swung around, it got to him, he drilled the three. He did draw a couple fouls and get to the free throw line a little bit. I tweeted something about D'Angelo after the game that made some of the fan base very mad, for obvious reasons. But the reason why I tweeted what I did was because of exactly what you and I have discussed before. It's like Austin, I have an excuse for, he's brand new to this whole experience in the playoffs, but like the third guy needs to be the third guy, because what Minnesota did to us that game by basically trying to take Anthony Davis out of the game completely by doubling him, showing late doubles, crowding the paint, that sort of thing. Like, their entire, like, that's going to be the strategy against, like, the Clippers did it to us too as well. So it's not like this is something new. Like, this is a standard strategy that teams are going to deploy on us, and Memphis is going to do the same thing. And my thing is, a lot of people have made, a lot of people, the go-to thing with our fan base seems to be, or just not our fan base, it's a NBA Twitter thing, is the number one thing to do is, who's the guy who has the worst plus minus, get him off the court. That's the first thing, and sub him for somebody else. And then the second thing usually ends up being, well, our coach is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing because he's not taking the guy that's the bad plus minus guy off the court. And sometimes that is true. Sometimes that is a valid thing. A player is in a slump, or a player, he's just not good. That's just what it is. But in the Lakers case, people being upset with Vando, like, and over the past couple of games, and he's had some of his issues. Like, he hasn't finished the ball very well. He's been losing the ball, like he's mishandling catches,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But that, like, he is a very important defensive component to that lineup that is not easy to replace. And he's willing to do a lot of the dirty work that we don't want to have LeBron or Anthony Davis do. And so my thing is, in order for us to mitigate those issues, this specific issue with this starting lineup, I need D'Angelo Russell to be the guy that we need him to be. And one of the things that concerned me is it was too easy to remove him from the game. And
right.
They put Anthony Edwards on him, and Anthony Edwards was just face guarding him. And he said, "I'm not going to let you get, I'm going to fight through every screen. I'm going to contest every shot." And you could tell it kind of messed with his rhythm. And he had a poor shooting game. But that's going to be what happens like against Memphis. Did you happen to see like Desmond Bane's like little clip interview that he did with Danny Green? Did it hit your timeline at all?
No, I didn't. What did he say? I'm interested.
Yeah, so like Desmond Bain, like Danny Green asked him essentially, he's like, "Oh, what do you guys?" He's asking about the matchup and stuff like that against the Lakers, and he said, like our number one goal is to, we have to reduce AD's impact. Like we have to be on AD. That's like number one priority, and preventing Braun from getting to the rim is like number two priority. But he basically says like 1A, 1B are their top two priorities, making sure AD and LeBron can get the rim. And then the very next thing he says is, when it comes to the role players, we like our matchups against them. And so, like when I'm not saying that that's exactly their game plan, but if you go back, I think the one thing that the Laker fans may not realize is that D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Vanderbilt, they're not new to the Memphis Grizzlies because they just played them in the first round last year. So they know who these guys are. There's no surprise factor when it comes to what these guys, like nobody's going to go and be like, yeah, I'm just going to accidentally leave D'Lo open, 8 times in the first quarter. That's not going to happen. Like they know how good they are. And the funny part is that Bane in that clip, and it's crazy because it's only like 1.5 minutes long, but he covers so much. He literally says, we have to watch out for Malik because Malik is the type of guy who could come in and just drain 6-7 threes and blow the game open. And so he's like very complimentary in that manner and stuff like that. So it's like, that tells me when it's that small of a clip and he's saying that much, these guys are like very, very like ready for what the Lakers are going to try and do. And if their top priority is to take Anthony Davis and LeBron out in terms of like preventing their easy looks, our role players really have to win their matchups. And it's not just D'Lo, it's everybody. Like we need to win our matchups. And so, we can start getting into it now. Like, what do you think are the big things that we should start looking into?
Yeah, I think D'Lo's the X factor in this series. Honestly, I think his ability to hit shots. You talked about it where they're going to pack the paint anyway. I think LeBron and AD kind of they're going to accentuate that. They're going to be even more in the paint. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to hide on Vanderbilt, and our counter to that, Vinay, I think is extremely important. Like him. So I know during the season, and we even talked about it, like the counter was him shooting the three. I think that's a mistake. I think Jared Vanderbilt shooting threes in Memphis, I think that's just the wrong idea. Long threes lead to long rebounds. That gets Memphis right into what they want to do, run in transition, right? People talk about Ja Morant, but Desmond Bane as well as a guy who will run up the floor. Jaren Jackson Jr. can run. Those guys can really get out. So I think number one, making this a half-court game is vital to me. I think making this a half-court, I think I saw you tweet it too. This needs to be a slugfest. Like this needs to be a back and forth 100, 105 type of scoring game. Maybe, give some points for where we're at in this era, but it needs to be a low scoring ball game, very lower possession ball game where the Lakers can kind of control the tempo, lower the turnovers, and put LeBron and D'Lo in, ball screen kind of actions where they can kind of run offense and get good shots out of it. Here's what I'm interested in. So you went to D'Lo, and I think against the Timberwolves, they sped him up in a way, and I think he just accepted it, right? And he still got his 8 assists, 1 turnover, but like D'Lo, if they're pressuring him, he can't turn into Rajon Rondo, right? Like that can't be who he becomes. Like just because they pressure him, he can't be like, okay, now I'm Rondo. No, like you are I know contracts don't really matter at this point in stage, but $30 million guard, you need to be able to punish dudes who can go over you need to be able to, punish dudes who go over the top, who go under screens. Like you should have a counter for any of those things. And I thought the game kind of sped up. I thought his intensity didn't really match. And it's kind of what happens when you miss games like throughout, right? And you're not really ready for like a full on intense ball game. But I think, Memphis, I think, Vinay, I don't know what you think. I think they're going to try to hide Ja Morant on D'Lo a little bit and just kind of see if that's who they can hide him on. And I hope D'Lo takes that in terms of like, okay, you're going to try to hide Ja Morant on me. Let me get in the block a little bit. Let me be aggressive. Let me get some shots up similarly to AD, like I think D'Lo's shot attempts need to be at a baseline level so that he's like in rhythm in the game. If he's like not, if his only touch is like spot up opportunities, I think it's just not enough. They're gonna ball hound the hell out of LeBron with Dylan Brooks. So I think it's gonna be. I think it's a tough ask to be like LeBron, bring the ball up every time, run the offense the whole time against Dylan Brooks, just wearing on him the whole time. That's where I think D'Lo, Austin Reeves. I don't think they're gonna put John Austin Reeves, as crazy enough as it is. I don't think they want him in foul type of situations. So do you agree with that? Do you think they put Ja on D'Lo? I think that's where it starts. And to me, if that's where it is, then our offense needs to be D'Lo centric a little bit to kind of get him going to start. But what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. I think that matchup is probably going to be the way that they play our backcourt. So when I went back and I started pulling the tape from the Memphis series that Minnesota played last year, because I wanted to see who they were defending D'Lo with and like how it was affecting his shot selection. So like first and foremost, at least from what I saw in the tape, for the possessions that involved D'Lo shooting the ball, so like looking at all the shot attempts, they played him one-on-one. And they played him one-on-one with like Desmond Bain, or they played him one-on-one with because I think Ja played that whole series, but they played him one-on-one with Desmond Bain, and then they also played him one-on-one with like Dylan Brooks. But that was a different team, right? That's Minnesota. They had different, they have Anthony Edwards, stuff like that. So they might have schemed it differently. But when I think about if I was Memphis, like like you think about it from like a who's a bigger threat to do different things when they score the ball. At least as of right now, like you can make the argument that Austin Reeves is a little bit more deadly just because his ability to attack a closeout, draw fouls, get to the rim, finish at the rim, that sort of thing. Like that's a little bit different. So he's a little bit more of a threat. And so for the exact reason that you like, I could see them going both ways. Like I could see them playing like Ja on him and just being like, yo, just take away the angles or something like that from him. But more likely they're probably going to put Bain on Austin Reeves just because he's a more physical presence. Austin's also bigger. Like they're the same height, but you can tell like Austin's more physical with how he plays. His offensive style of play. So yeah, that would mean that Ja is going to be hidden, or whatever term we want to use, on D'Lo, which means that Ja has like, he is not, I don't want to say he's notorious for it, but like he does like sometimes fall asleep off ball and stuff like that. So it's like the Lakers have to, like, D'Lo has to punish him for stuff like that, which means I don't need you doing a skip pass to Vando, even if Vando's wide open in the corner. Like I need you to shoot that, right? And this is the same thing we said about Austin before. Like Austin has to have some self-reflection and be like, okay, the right play is to give it to the wide open guy, but you have to also know your personnel. You are the 45% three-point shooter. Swinging it to the corner, no matter how you feel, how much confidence you think you're adding to Vando, like I'm sure Vando will be okay with you shooting the ball. You know what I mean? So it's just like I need D'Lo to do that. And the Minnesota game, and I feel like in the first half, there was a play where D'Lo got the ball in an outlet and he advanced it up, and guys are still coming back in transition. And he made a play where I thought he really should have just pulled up and just taken the three, because it was probably the best look he had gotten so far the entire game in transition. And he can make, he's a great transition three shooter. And he swung it to Vando in the corner. And I was just like, no, just shoot it. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like it's you're not going to get in trouble. Like we need your shooting, or the threat of your shooting, for teams to play you honestly. And like we just have to do that. Like we can't allow them to dictate like funnel shots to Vanderbilt. Like, because that's a win for Memphis, honestly. And I don't think that's 100%. The right way to go about doing it.
Yeah, I mean, jump shots for Vanderbilt, even LeBron, even for AD, right, are kind of wins for the Memphis defense there, and they're gonna try to force you. So I think our jump shooting is so vital. And Desmond Bain brought up Malik Beasley, which I'm worried about Malik Beasley just being playable from a defensive standpoint. The Grizzlies kind of have a guy like that, and Luke Kennard. I think Laker fans know all about Luke Kennard and how much he can swing a game, but I think just the guy who can kind of open up, kind of weaken their defense a little bit, like keep their integrity of their defense, on point. Just need to hit a couple open threes. And LeBron's jumper's been going on recently, but yeah, D'Lo is like he's paid to hit jump shots, right? Like he's not a defensive player, not a player who's going to impact the game in other really ways. He can play make as well, but like he's here to hit jump shots, and hopefully, on the road in Memphis, like this is a big series for him. Honestly, that playing game probably left a lot of bad taste probably in his mouth and a lot of people's mouth, like watching that play. But it's a guy, he's been in the playoffs before. You mentioned it. He played this exact team last year. Struggled, in that series. I thought made him and Towns combined made just some terrible plays. I honestly, like, you go back and watch that series, when they probably should have won like that series. I mean, they won a lot of games where they just blew it at the end. So this is a chance maybe to redeem that, to just to play better. And yeah, his ball screen action to me will be so important. His combination with AD, I think those two guys need to put some pressure off LeBron. So I hope he's ready. I hope the team is. They have a huge break coming up here. By the way, when I was looking, Memphis hasn't played their real guys since April 7th, by the way. So the first playoff game is in 3 days. So they're gonna have a huge break between playing. You can maybe catch a little bit of rust to them. They actually started Luke Kennard with Ja Morant in their last real game. So I'm really interested to kind of where the matchups go with that. I think they're gonna start Tillman here, but yeah, if they hide Jaren Jackson Jr. on Jared Vanderbilt, so he's gonna be patrolling the paint. Then you have their other big, maybe Tillman in a drop. You need D'Lo to punish those. So hopefully he's ready. But you want to read this chat that's up on the video stream here?
Yeah, so let me read the chat that we got there YouTube from Jordan. So he poses a good question, which is like the question that I think is always a question on Lakers Twitter's mind. And it's what should we do if Vando, if his assignment, which is probably going to be Triple J, is cheating off of him, and what does Vando do? Does he just crash the boards? Does he just do DHO? And so I think for me, the way I think about it is the crashing the boards part is good. Like that, I think that's essentially what he should be doing. I don't know if DHO is exactly the answer for it, because if they start doing DHO actions, they'll start honoring the what's it called. My thing is this: if you're going to use him as DHO, then the person that's running the action with him has to be aggressive in scoring.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work. Like you can't run DHO with a guy who's like, okay, let's just we'll take a step back, right? Let's say the standard strategy, the go-to strategy for Memphis is we are going to have 5 guys who always have 1 foot in the paint at all times when it's half court defense. Okay. So if you run DHO, that person coming off of that screen has to either pull up and take a long 2 or a 3, right? Assuming that we get the screen is effective or something like that. Or they have to try to get into the middle of the paint, depending on how the coverage reacts to that action. My thing is, and that's why I mentioned D'Lo as the most, like that means D'Lo and Austin have to shoot that ball. Like they have to be aggressive when they come shooting that ball. So my thing with Vando is the only way we can mitigate his defense, his offensive inability, is that the other guys have to be better offensively, right? So I can't have D'Lo get wiped out because one guy's being physical with him, and now he can't use that DHO, or he won't shoot coming off of that DHO, or he's like hesitant to shoot. Like you've got to be aggressive. You get blocked at the rim, whatever. Like it is what it is. Or if you get blocked from behind it, but we have to make them do something, like react to what we do. And so I think a lot of people, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Like I think a lot of people have been looking at it, and it's not the wrong way. Like a lot of people have just been saying, well, you take you sub Rui, start Rui instead of Vando, which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue. I think Rui's defense has been better as of late, and against a guy like Jackson, you can probably play him because it's not like he's a super mobile big, but he is skilled, so he can post up and shoot over Rui possibly and stuff like that. And obviously Rui's ability to shoot would make, they'd have to honor it to some degree. But at the same time, now we move Vando to the bench, and now that hurts. That can potentially hurt them. But now you'll have Dennis Schroeder minutes with Vando at the same time, and the Lakers have to figure that part out. And then if Wendy Gabriel gets he only got 1 shift last time. So now you'll run 3 non-shooters, Dennis, Vando. And so like the trade-off is you suffer somewhere, like by moving him around like that. And the Lakers aren't going to bench him outright because he's too good of a defensive player for us to do something like that. So, well, what do you think about that? Like, how do we approach using Vando in this situation?
Yeah, so to me, I think the ceiling of a Vando, AD, LeBron defensive front court is worth it to like continue to start him. I still think that just 3-man combo, the numbers bear this out as well. Just defensively, especially when LeBron's engaged, I think AD as well will be engaged on that end, and I think Vanderbilt just works around those two really well. I think crashing the offensive boards is tough against a Memphis team that's huge and physical, but I like the DHO, and again, I think this just takes away responsibility from the guard. The guards just have to play well. They just have to shoot well. Austin Reeves shooting 45% from 3. Get those up. You're gonna have looks. D'Lo again, I think he can really work off of that. I think Vanderbilt misses like Malik Beasley there, right? I think, obviously we started Austin before LeBron came back. So kind of once, LeBron came back, they kind of kept the starting lineup. But I think that's where you kind of miss Malik Beasley. I think you call it a psychopath shooter. I think we miss like that type of shooter where he'll fly off screens where you can't be back on those. You have to be up. And Memphis does a good job rotating as well. They're really athletic. They move around, one of the best defense, and they keep you out of the paint. But I just don't think Vando's shooting is the right answer there. And he has like so many tricks too. He can slide behind the defense to get underneath. He puts pressure by being in the dunker spot as well. But I think, guys like even LeBron will have to hit open jump shots. And I think there's no getting around that. I don't think starting Rui takes like Rui can shoot, but Rui's not a volume 3-point shooter either, though. It's not like you throw Rui out there and he's been shooting better. It's just like it's still kind of like he's a wide open spot up 3. Like that's the type of shots that he likes to get. I just don't think that you're getting a lot of those anyway in that starting lineup. You have AD and LeBron on the floor. Like I think you said this before too. It doesn't matter who you put out there. Like they're gonna pack the paint. It doesn't matter who's there. The responsibility will be to knock down jump shots from the role players, and that doesn't go away starting Rui or Vando. And yeah, Dennis Schroeder, Vanderbilt lineups. I think along with LeBron's second units, those have been getting ran off the floor. You said Wenyen got a 1 shift. I wouldn't even count it that he played a minute 50 in the Minnesota playing game. So we'll see if he gets minutes here. But yeah, like to me, those guys just have to hit shots in Memphis. There's no getting around that. And they're going to play off Vanderbilt. They're going to put Jaren Jackson Jr. on him. And to me, that's the counter. Get our guys hitting a few, kind of loosen that up. And so to where JJJ has to be just a little bit more up on those, right? Like he can't be all the way in the paint. And that's where AD can get going. He can start drawing fouls on Xavier Tillman, whoever they put out there. And that's where you can kind of really loosen that defense up. But until we hit jump shots, that's not happening. It doesn't matter who kind of is there. Yeah, that's where I think Vanderbilt's role should be. And then he could do all the other stuff. And then he can tap boards, right? He's so good at like just tapping rebounds away and creating extra possessions in that way. And even if he doesn't get the offensive rebound, he taps it to where AD gets it and AD gets a dunk off of that, right? Just having him being a guy they have to box out, I think is important. And I think it's still worth it to have him starting so far. And we've done it. We're so low on continuity already. But I don't feel like switching it up again, right? Like I think we're already so low on lineups that have continuity that I would just like to keep this going. And if you have to bench him like in fourth quarters like they did, that's fine. Rui can close, Dennis Schroeder close right over D'Lo. Those are buttons Ham can push. But I think with the starters, let's keep something going that has been working. I think they're like 7-1 with those starters so far.
Yeah. So I'm totally on board with that. I think you and I are of the same mind that at this point they played together like enough, and they've sort of had to figure stuff out enough on their own. Where at this point they just have to, they just have to. That's what it's going to be. And I agree with you. I don't think Ham is the type to, do something very drastic, like just pull them out of that, because you never also know if it could affect their confidence and stuff like that when it comes to just making a change like that. And we've also seen that, Ham has like, he's not afraid, like even with the D'Lo example and the Vando example from the Minnesota game, like it's very clear that they're okay with, like, if D'Lo's having a bad game and somebody else, like Dennis played extraordinarily well in that second half, especially. Like he was part of the bench group that kind of got their butts kicked in the first half, but he was way better in the second half. And he sprained his ankle, came back, and still, was effective and helped win that game for us in the fourth quarter. But like, it's clear that even with a guy like D'Lo on the roster, even with potential contract extension coming up, all that sort of stuff, Ham is going to play the guys in the second half who are effective or playing defense or doing something productive and playing with confidence, I guess, through the rest of the game. And like D'Lo didn't play that many more minutes in the second half. He came in for spot offense to defense substitutions at the very end of the game, but it was mainly Dennis and it was mainly Austin. So it's very clear that Ham is going to go with whoever he trusts, and he does trust Dennis, and he does trust Austin. That doesn't mean he won't play the other guys. Just that those are the guys that he trusts in that moment. He played Troy Brown for some minutes too as well. So it's like,
yeah.
So it makes sense. So like that's a very tactical thing, right? That we've talked about when it comes to lineups and how schematically Memphis is going to do that. And I do think Memphis is for sure that shell coverage, the shell zone, or whatever people want to call it. Like that's going to be their standard coverage in half court. They might play traditional zone too a little bit, but for the most part, that's what it's going to be. They're going to play that shell zone because they want to keep Anthony Davis away from being, in any sort of rhythm. And same thing with LeBron, right? They'll play him straight up with Dylan Brooks, but there will always be extra guys ready, and it's always going to be Jackson most likely. Jaren Jackson, like just waiting to try and block shots from behind, or as a help side guy and stuff like that. But that's very tactical, and most teams have deployed the same tactics. But there's another aspect to this series, which me and you have been joking about. Memphis wants to beat the shit out of us. Like they're not a team
no doubt.
They're not a team that is. They're not a team that like. The best way I can explain it is like when they go up 20, Memphis is the type of team that's like, oh no, we want to beat them by 40. We want to extend the lead even more, and that's the mentality that this team has, and it comes from guys like Ja, guys like Desmond Bane, like. Taylor Jenkins doesn't really care about what, obviously there's ethics, like don't shoot the ball at the end if you're in a blowout or something like that. But for the most part, he lets his guys play. And he's not like one of these guys who's very careful, like, oh, I'm not going to play. We're up by 20. I'm not going to play Ja, or 25. I'm not going to play Ja very much in the third quarter. No, Ja's playing 30 minutes. And then when it's like the last 8 minutes of the game and they're up by 45, then he'll go and bench him. You know what I mean? So it's like the reason why I mentioned that is because I thought Minnesota came out with in our game with like this mentality, like we're going to be the aggressors. We're going to be the bullies in the alley that are waiting for you on your way home or whatever. And I think the Lakers really struggled with that the entire first half. And it wasn't until, the bench shift or whatever it was in the third quarter where they really started fighting back. They were like, all right, no, F this. Like, we're not losing this game. And LeBron really led the way. He was going all out in transition. Braun was blocking shots. You know what I mean? At the Rui was doing stuff. Dennis was phenomenal. Like, game one is in Memphis at 12 o'clock, the dreaded noon time for the Lakers. And they are going to send a message. They are going to let folks know that we know that you've been picking the Lakers to upset us, and it's Lakers in 6 or Lakers in 7 or whatever it is that people are saying. And we're going to show you why you guys shouldn't, you should change your projections. Like, what do you think about, what are your thoughts about like the attitude or like the energy that Memphis is going to come with?
I think I told you before, like there was a game against Minnesota last year. I think it was last season or maybe this season. And Karl Anthony Towns started just screaming like obscenities, like, and they were only up, I think, like 10 points, but Karl Anthony Towns was I think he just came back or something like that. He just started screaming like, I'm 10 toes down, like stuff like that when they're barely up like 10 points. But he wanted to like, and Karl Anthony Towns does this for some reason. He plays really well in the Anthony Davis matchup. If you only watch Wolves Lakers games, you would think Towns is like a top 5 player in the league. It's just the way he kind of plays against us. But yeah, he does all that stuff. Memphis is like 10 times that. Like their whole lineup, Dylan Brooks, those guys like really like to take it to you, and they'll let you know about it too. Like they'll talk the whole game. Ja obviously with the dancing, and then Dylan Brooks with the shit talking. He's more than comfortable with it. Will give you a super hard foul, walk away, and then talk shit to you like after doing that. Like it's just stuff that they do, and it's part of their culture, and it's why they've won the games that they have. Like that's part of what they've internalized that and have become like a really good team by doing that. You don't get to where they have without being that type of aggressor. Jaren Jackson Jr. obviously enforces the paint. One of my concerns, Renee, is, so I wrote this in my notes as well. LeBron and AD are very lackadaisical in game ones. Like they come out very lackadaisical in this feel out process, right? Of like, let me feel out what this team's gonna do. Memphis is gonna run you off the floor. Like you try any of that cute, read the defense 10 seconds. Let me read what the defense is before going. You're gonna be down 20 at halftime. Like there's none of like there. You can't come out with that type of energy. So I'm interested in. I think it's going to be a huge Dennis game. I think he's going to play a lot of minutes. I just think like, your starting guards aren't really, they're not that physical type of guards, right? And Memphis is going to make you play a physical, rugged game. And I think that's kind of that's going to be the contrast there that they're going to have to look out for. But yeah, Memphis is going to want to kick your ass. But the also side part though, Vinay, LeBron probably remembers the Desmond Bain talking crap up 15 in crypto. Like he probably remembers that as well. Telling them I think he told them to be humble or something like that, or play basketball, I think was his term. So there's some of that as well. And we'll see like who kind of internalizes that more. But yeah, that's a little bit of my worry as well. LeBron and AD sometimes come out lackadaisical in game ones, and the team kind of, I think, they match whatever their energy is. Like whatever their energy is, that's what the team comes out as. And I'm hopeful they, come out a little bit better on Sunday. You said 12 o'clock start. It's a 12 o'clock our time, at least. It's not 12 o'clock Memphis time. So at least that might be a little bit of a saving grace there. Hopefully that's not like a 12 o'clock for them. But yeah, no, Memphis wants to kick your ass. And they want you to know that they're kicking your ass, and like want you and to like enjoy it the whole time. There's none of this, they're not like happy to be here. You know what I mean? Like they're not happy to be here. They're not like, oh my God, it's LeBron James. Like, no, there's none of that. They want to just kick your ass. And I think that's a fun, rugged series to start with.
Yeah, I do want to give a compliment to that Memphis team in this fashion. What they try to do, like the way that, like, I get the Dylan Brooks thing is really annoying, and I get it. And the Ja dancing thing, people, like there are people like, oh, Ja's so corny because he dances. Dylan Brooks is so corny because he's a role player and he's talking so much trash and stuff like that. But it's just like the one thing I do respect about it is that it's not even a respect. I kind of admire is like, I grew up, I'm older than you. Like I grew up watching 90s basketball. I grew up watching early 2000s basketball. The dead ball era is what people call it. Like this is how teams were. Like teams, like they weren't nice to each other. Like they were friends off the court, right? Like, people make a whole big deal that today's generation, they're all friends. They grow up in AAU and stuff like that. So they're all buddies. They don't really actually dislike each other. But it's like, and that's fine. I think that's the same back then. I think, back then people used to, most NBA players are like, well, we are part of a very exclusive fraternity of 400 players or whatever in the world that play in this league. So there was always that level of separation from the common man. But like these teams genuinely didn't like each other, and teams used to take on that sort of personality, right? Like, and if you're a newer Laker fan or a Laker fan that maybe like you really followed the team intensely, like maybe right after Kobe left and stuff like that. Like we used to have guys that were complete dickheads to other teams, like Rick Fox. Like he's in the news right now because Spencer Dinwiddie mentioned him when he was beefing with Kuzma and stuff like that. But like Rick Fox used to be an asshole to people. Like he used to be an asshole defender. Derek Fisher was not a nice guy. There's a highlight of Derek Fisher launching himself into Luis Scola because he didn't like the way Luis Scola screened. Yes. Yeah, and Derek Fisher's probably like one of like as a player at least, like one of the guys that was like, oh, everybody's very nice and stuff. Kobe's running mate and stuff like that. Like Robert Horry was not a nice guy. Like we didn't have nice guys on our team. Shaq was an asshole. Kobe was an asshole himself, like to everybody. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like the one thing I do admire about this Memphis team is that they don't pretend to be nice. Like they want to win the game. They want, like, maybe they go too far with the trash talk and like trying to embarrass you. And maybe the dancing is a little bit too far because it's just, but that's maybe a generational thing. Because I couldn't imagine somebody dancing like back in the 90s on the court. It's just the new generation of basketball player. But that's what makes it so good. That's what made it so fun. Like that's what makes basketball fun. Like that these teams don't like each other. Like if Bron is, Bron did the post game last time and he was jokingly saying, like they asked him like, oh, what do you think about Memphis? And Bron starts going down the list. He's just like, this guy's like this guy's like this. Tyus Jones, best assist to turnover ratio, blah, blah. He's like, and then he jokingly says, oh, I haven't been thinking about them at all. And everybody starts laughing. Media folks laugh. But if Braun is paying attention, you know what I mean? Like that, it's almost a good
yeah.
thing that these guys are the way they are, because then we might get a locked in. Like he probably will be, game one will probably be a feel out game for sure. But he might come locked in. He might be like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to get embarrassed, because look at social media today. If Braun gets embarrassed, if we get blown out by like 40 or 30, I'm not saying that we will, but if we do, like, you know, like the extremism from social media, like, Braun is washed, Braun is this, Braun is that. Maybe Braun's like, nah, we're not doing that. I'm not doing this again. Like, I'm not going to be trash talked by Desmond Bain and all these guys. And then forget that incident. We just had an incident earlier this year where they were beefing with, you know, one of his biggest fans, Shannon Sharp, who was sitting on the sidelines. Like, this beef is like, you know what I mean? Like, it almost feels like if I was ESPN, and if somebody on ESPN is on their burner listening to this space, probably not. But if you are, the way I would write the story for this series is like Memphis is trying to send Braun into a retirement home. Like, that's how they approach this game, and that's how they don't respect him. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, we know who you are, but we don't care. You know what I mean? Like they want to send him home. And like, if I had to write a story, this is like Braun like saying, no, I'm still that guy. Like, you're like that. You're not going to send me home like this. And I think that's great. I think it's because it's going to force the Lakers to be like, you can't be like we can't just come in and be complacent, because they're not going to give us games. And Memphis probably believes that they could come to LA and take a game from us, no issues. So I will say that, like, I think it's good for basketball, even beyond our series. Like that teams, players, and teams have this. As annoying as it sounds, I know Twitter will do his thing and be like, "How dare this guy say this? He has no rings, you know, like he shouldn't." But it's like,
yeah,
I want guys that can compete. Like Dylan Brooks can't shoot, but I love to have a defender like him, because he like bothers the shit out of like everybody he plays. But like it's your point was like, it's going to be a feel like, but we have to match their energy. Like, we can't just be like,
exactly.
If they go up 10 in like the first 2 minutes of the game, it doesn't mean like, oh, you know what, we're just going to pack it away. I got to see fight and stuff like that from this team, and see that they match their energy.
We need a tone set, right? Like from the jump, the tone has to be set. And the last game that even compares to this, Renee, is the Clipper game, right? We were down 15-2 right away, and we kind of packed it in. LeBron had a great second half. He had 30 in the second half. But the first half obviously was miserable. I think he had like 6 shot attempts. 80, I think, was taken out of the game by the Clippers, as he, sometimes usually is. But that's the type of game like where that can't happen this time. You can't be down 25, at halftime if you're trying to win this series. Yeah, I think last thing really think on Memphis, they're like unabashedly themselves, right? They don't pretend to be anything they're not. Look at the Warriors games. They don't pretend to like, oh, Draymond or Steph. They don't give a crap about that. They don't give a shit about that. And Draymond obviously went on a really long kind of thing on Brooks as well. But like, yeah, like I like how they play. I think Dylan Brooks gets shit, and he's gonna lose. I think I said before, the ratio, like he's gonna win one game for Memphis but lose 2 for them. So we should come out on like the right side of that. But he's an absolutely all NBA type defender. So you can't take that away from him. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see how they come out. And if LeBron and AD can set the tone, I think you have a chance. You have Memphis, who hasn't played a real game since 6 days ago. The first game isn't for another 3 days. So they're going to be rested. They're going to be off for like 9 games of like have not played a real basketball game. The Lakers kind of showed what that looks like, right? But we played like 6 unserious games before that Minnesota one. It was Phoenix, Utah twice, right? Phoenix didn't play anybody. Utah not playing anybody. We played Houston, and the only team within that was the Clippers, who obviously was on that second night of the back-to-back, 4 out of 5 or something like that. Then you jump into Minnesota, right, who's like been playing these games where they need to win every time as well, and they were playing a little bit more real competition. I think they just played the Pelicans, right, who were also in do or die, who went home last night. Crazy game with them, but yeah, like I think they jumped right into a Minnesota team, and you're like, oh wait, this is serious basketball. We've been bullshitting for like 2 weeks now. We have to jump into real hoops, and I think Memphis, you might see a little bit of that. So I'm hoping the Lakers kind of jump on them being a little bit rusty. Ja obviously came back. I don't think he's in the exact rhythm he was when they were winning at that 55 win pace. See if you can kind of jump on them. But no, Memphis is legit. They're a really good team. I honestly thought they would be the 1 seed if Ja didn't get hurt. That was kind of my thinking there. You saw Denver kind of slide a little bit, and I thought Memphis can kind of catch them. But they obviously finished the number 2 seed. I'm fascinated how they come out. If LeBron and AD can come out and set a tone, I think you have a shot. You have a chance. And you guys hit shots. D'Lo, Austin, Dennis. You have 3 guards. and need like 2 of them to have solid games. Get 2 of your guards to have solid games. I think you really have a chance here.
Yeah. Even the Minnesota series last year, like that series went down to, like, many of those games sort of went down to the wire. And I remember at the end of game 1, so that was like Anthony Edwards' first game, and I watched it because I just want to see how he played, and I'm high on him. So it's like he had 36 in that game, and at the end of that game, he was guarding Ja, and like he was like just like he was against us. Like, he's just a fantastic defender. So like putting him on Ja, like it didn't neutralize Ja, but it like he was like a real athlete. So like Ja wasn't gonna be able to get easy shots on him and stuff like that. And so this is a perfect transition because, we talked about the tactical stuff with Vando, and then we talked about the energy stuff between Memphis and the Lakers. But like the next part is the big sort of issue in front of us, which is Ja Morant is he has one of the best first steps in basketball. With either hand, he can attack the rim. He doesn't need a screen if he doesn't want to. If he gets the right matchup, he can go right after somebody. He's not that great of a three-point shooter. He's better. I think he's improved this season compared to prior, but that's not really what he likes to do. Ja can get out. He's a one-man fast break. I've seen people compare him to like Russ Westbrook back in OKC, like his style of play and stuff like that. But he's incredibly explosive. Like in a blink of an eye, he can finish at the rim. He's got a crazy bounce where he can pretty much one step in front of the free throw line finish like a layup around a real rim defender if he has to, just because of how athletic and acrobatic he is. But he is a problem. And one of the things that is a concern for me is how we deal with defending him, because Austin can do only so much. D'Lo, I would say, is probably a worse defender than Austin in terms of isolation matchups or even navigating screens. So it's a real problem. But we do have one, if not one of the best rim defenders in the league in Anthony Davis in the paint. And, Minnesota was very good. And we talked about it prior to the playing game. One of my big concerns was if AD gets pulled out of the paint by Karl Anthony Towns, which happened a few times in that first half, we're going to be in trouble because we don't have the backline protection that we need to stop a guy from getting to the rim like Anthony Edwards. We were fortunate that Anthony Edwards, didn't terrorize us the way that we wanted. That he could have, but Kyle Anderson was getting layups at the rim. Other guys were getting layups at the rim. Ja's not one of those guys. Like, Ja is going to get to the rim if he sees an opening. What are your thoughts on, like, you can't really stop him, but you can try to slow him down a little bit. What do you think about like that whole process of dealing with him? How would you approach that process?
Yeah, so last time that we played them, he went 15 for 29 from the field, right? And all of those are like midi floaters. If Ja's going to shoot 15 for 29, like, you're going to have a hard time winning. You have to make him a little bit at least less efficient in that. And I think, so in that game, we started Dennis and Malik Beasley. So a lot of times it would just be a quick screen, and Malik Beasley has no chance to guard Ja Morant, just zero chance. And so you have AD on the back line there. We started AD with Vanderbilt and Troy Brown. Those are just too small. Troy Brown doesn't have like the physicality, I think, to kind of keep Ja out of the paint. But what I would do, I think you're going to have to back off him. You're going to have to try to give him a little bit of space. But your transition defense, to me, Vinay, that's where it lives. You need to be back. You talked about the communication on transition has been really rough. Even when we've played well defensively, our transition numbers are still really bad. We don't match up correctly. 2 guys go on the ball for some reason. We leave open shooters. You're going to die that way. The Clippers kind of picked on us that way as well to start the game. Russ pushed the ball on us every single time. We got wide open looks for Eric Gordon, who hit, I think, 3 threes in the first quarter. So Ja Morant's in that same vein. He will push the basketball and kick it out. They lead the league in like points in the paint. I think they're incredible inside there. Ja's a big part of that. But you want him to like funnel him to AD. You want to kind of bait him into jump shots. I think that's the move. If Ja's hitting threes, you're kind of screwed. Anyway, you don't really, have a shot there. But I mean, he was 0 for 5 from 3, Vinay, in that game. So you put that to those numbers there. So he was actually what 15 for like 24 from the field. Actually, if you take out the threes that he took in the night, that's way too efficient. That's too easy. That's getting to right to his floater range. You have to kind of take that shot away. You want him taking those a little bit outside the paint. Again, easier said than done. Jaren Jackson Jr. popping, I think, is another interesting factor. I wonder if they kind of live with those to start, kind of close out a little bit late on those to try to protect the paint. But you have two teams who are going to protect the paint. You have two teams who live by, protecting the paint, giving up outside shots. Taylor Jenkins, Darvin Ham, both Mike Budenholzer, disciples. Both of those guys both win really similar systems. Obviously, do it in different ways. Their superstars get their buckets in different, in a different fashion. But that's how I would approach it. I would, so in that starters, I wouldn't put D'Lo on him or Austin. I would think about starting with Vanderbilt on it and then kind of work that to Dennis as a second unit. What would you start with? I think it's fascinating. I think Reeves might get the call and they might put Vanderbilt on Bane, but I would like to slow Ja down from the start, put someone physical on him, and then make him work on the other end. But just him on offense, I think Vanderbilt's kind of the guy. You want to just give Vanderbilt an assignment, and I think that's a good one. Give it to Ja Morant, see what he can do, be physical, kind of pressure him up, and see if you can kind of funnel him to AD there. But what would you do? Who would you start with on Ja?
Yeah, so I think putting Vando on him is probably the right option. I remember watching the series last year, and the Warriors are probably, they have Ron Adams as a defensive assistant, and he's probably one of the most brilliant defensive guys in the league. So what the Warriors were doing were they were playing at times they would play Andrew Wiggins or Jonathan Kuminga on Ja. They would play a really great athlete, which Vanderbilt is, who is taller than Ja, like long wingspan, that sort of thing, which Vanderbilt is too as well. And neither of those guys could really stay in front of Ja, but their entire game plan or part of their game plan was to take Ja away from his strong hand and force him to go to his other. Now, just to put it in perspective, he doesn't really have a weak hand, right? Like, so when I say take away his strong hand, it's just the one that he likes to go with. So we're just going to try and move him in the direction he doesn't want to, because he's still a tremendous finisher. So it really doesn't matter. But what the Warriors, I thought, did really well is they would force him to go to in with the hand that he didn't want to go to, and then they would, as soon as he committed to his drive, they would have that guy, whether it's AD for us, or it's LeBron or somebody else, they'd have a second guy ready waiting at the rim, right? So what would happen is you can't cut off his angle because he's just too fast, and if anything, if you try to cut off his angle, he'll draw a foul, snap his head back or something. He might get the foul call. We don't want Vando to get in foul trouble, but you want to corral him. And if he's going to take that shot, just take it from the areas of the court. If it's going to be a floater or a contested layup, whatever, take it with the hand that we want you to take it with in this part of the court where you're going to take it with. Like, take it on the left side of the rim as opposed to the right side of the rim. We don't want you to take it from the middle of the paint because you jump so damn high. Like, you can basically switch hands in the middle of the air if you wanted to. That sort of thing. Like, take away some of the angles, the shooting angles that he would want. And the Warriors, I thought, did a really good job before Ja went down with injury. Like, I thought they did a really good job corralling him in that capacity. So if we deploy Vando like that, I'm all for it. That's what I would do, because that is a way that, again, we're not going to stop him, but we can probably, it might help us slow him down. Like, if 15 out of 30 is his normal, like if we can get him to like maybe 10 of 25, like even if it results in him not driving as much because he's not scoring as easily, and it casts a little bit of doubt, and maybe he's kicking out a little bit more because he thinks that's the right play because he's not making shots. Things could go in our favor in that manner, but it's really something that has to be. And it's like, my other thing is also this, like, it has to be something that we have discipline about as long as he's on the court. Like, we can't just be like, oh, we're going to do this for one quarter. It worked. Because I remember the last time we played, he had a third quarter where he put up like 25 on us in that quarter by itself, if I remember correctly. And we completely lost all discipline in how we were going to play defense against them. And that killed us. And to the point that I originally brought up, that we were originally discussing, you brought up a perfect point. The Lakers finished this season, per Cleaning the Glass, as the third worst transition defense in the NBA across the league. We were the third worst transition defense. And I guarantee you that's probably one of the number one things that's on Taylor Jenkins' board. If they miss, run. Get out in transition. Don't wait for anybody. If you see 80 behind you, don't slow down. Just go. Whoever it is. If it's Dillon Brooks, if it's Ja, if it's Desmond Bain, whoever, just get out. Even if it's Jaren Jackson, like push the ball up the floor, and we'll get a good opportunity for us. And that happened in the Minnesota game too, as well. Like it's something that we saw happen. A lot of runouts for easy buckets because we didn't get back in transition. So I agree with you. Tactically, Vando and then maybe trading off to Dennis because Dennis is a little bit better at cutting off angles because of his speed would definitely work. But having that communication on the back end that no matter who is guarding Ja, this is how we're going to defend him at the rim. Have the rotations behind them so that he's not able to get easy kickouts. Because I think one of the other things that maybe like Memphis fans will tell you this, but NBA fans in general don't really. Ja's actually a pretty good playmaker. Like he can create plays and find guys in open spots. Yeah. He's not just like this dude that's like mindlessly just attacking the rim over and over again. He looks for his teammates, and like the Lakers have to make sure they rotate on the back end. They don't leave Desmond Bain uncovered, or Luke Kennard, or Santi Aldama, or whatever the other big guy is that shoots corner threes. You know what I mean? Like, or John Conchar, whatever. I forgot how to pronounce his last name. Like. Those guys will all shoot it. They're not afraid to shoot the ball, and they're coached to take those shots. So, like, we have to be good tactically, but we also, as a team, just have to be better defensively in transition.
Well, so on the transition thing, I think that's also a counter, right? Because a lot of teams, so the Lakers like to, Vando, Anthony Davis, they really crash the offensive glass, right? That's what they like to do. They love to crash the boards. And a counter to that is pushing the pace in transition. So you're getting to run outs. Pushing the pace. That's a counter to our guys attacking the offensive rebound. And I think that's something that teams do on us. And that's where like you have to kind of be a little bit more disciplined there. If you don't have a chance at it, get back. I think against Memphis, I would just try to get back. Maybe you said one guy to the glass. But other than that, you should be in full sprint back. Another counter here, I think that's going to happen. I think, we might start LeBron on Jaren Jackson Jr. and have AD on Dillon Brooks, right? Because I think that's a guy they're going to dare. I can already tell Dillon Brooks is either going to have 3 threes in the first quarter, he's going to be 0 for 6. There's no minimum. There's no like mid ground there. I think he's going to either, be really hot or be really cold. And so I think we're going to start AD on maybe Dillon Brooks or LeBron on Dillon Brooks, have one of those guys roam. And the reason I want Vanderbilt on Ja, I think it's so important those guys are able to get skinny or get around screens. Right, the term is get skinny, kind of be able to chase. I think that's so vital. D'Lo is not that type of guard. Just can't get over like that. I think Austin tries. He eats screens. Like he really eats screens when he goes around. He fights through. He draws offense. He draws charges on them, but he gets crushed on a lot of those. I think it's just his body, right? He's kind of thin.
He's also the other thing, like this thing with Austin, he's also learned how to sell screens that are like slightly illegal and draw offensive fouls on them. So it's just like that's like another thing that he's kind of gotten good at. Like we got a couple of them against Minnesota, and it actually takes teams out of like their actions. They won't run that same action immediately afterwards. It's gonna be like, oh shit, Austin's on this guy. You risk a what's it called, but. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, not to interrupt, but like the D'Lo thing, like he will die on screens. Like if it's a good enough screen or even above average screen, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really die if you never lived on it, but like, yeah, it's like it's not even like around on the screen.
Laker fans, Raj said it, not me. So now you guys can go quote.
No, look, that's not his role. It's not what he's paid. No, he's paid for. But yeah, like so, Austin gets eaten on those picks. It's why I think Vando can really chase over, give back pressure there, kind of make that floater a little bit tougher, and then force those kicks out to Dillon Brooks. And hopefully, he's cold and he kind of shoots them out of it. Dillon Brooks, his shot selection is just. I know he has a free roam to take these because the defensive. He even says he's like, I defend so hard, I've earned the right to take these type of shots. That's fine. You just watch them, and it's like I was watching their playoffs from last season. It's like game 2, and like it's like a tight game, and Dillon Brooks is taking like step back threes over his defender. It's just so I think that'll be an interesting kind of wrinkle to this series. But yeah, go ahead.
So I was gonna say one thing. So like something strange, like something I thought about was kind of strange. So like. like the Dylan has like this energy about him, like he's like the big tough guy on the team and stuff like that. And
the
people
enforcer for
on
them.
people on Twitter are like, oh, this guy's a loser, blah blah blah, that sort of stuff. And I just kind of thought a little bit about it. Like Draymond has that role with the Warriors too, as well, right? And Draymond, like of you and I both follow a few Warriors fans. Like some of the Warrior fans that I follow, like they'll tell me, and these are hardcore Warrior fans, they'll say Draymond's untouchable within the organization. Like Draymond can do anything he wants, and the organization will never say anything to him. Like the coaching staff will never say anything to him. Like he does what he does. So when he's like arguing with refs and being super animated, getting himself kicked out of games, punching his freaking teammate in the offseason in the face, like he might get reprimanded or something like that. But for the most part, like he kind of has the authority to do what he wants. And like that's it, not from a basketball perspective, but from like this is who I am as it relates to the rest of this team. Like I'm the big dog, and people sometimes have to just kind of let me do my own thing. Now, Draymond's a very high IQ guy, so he's never going to like come in and start jacking up shots. Like he knows how to play the game. But if you take that same role and you apply it to Dylan Brooks, because this Memphis team is a young team, right? It's not like they have a bunch of OGs on that roster that kind of like there's no Udonis Haslams or Jared Dudley's on that roster. So if Dylan Brooks is the big dog in that locker room, if he has the same mentality and role within that team that Draymond Green has for the Warriors, and he's turning around and saying, I earned these shots, who's going to tell him no? And for me, as a Laker fan, I'm like, go ahead. You're right. You're the big dog. Shoot the ball. Like, I don't mind it. But it's like the Lakers should I almost feel like you should encourage him to take these shots and to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Really quickly on the Draymond thing, I think there's a misconception, I think, with the Warriors. Really quickly on the Warriors, because I think this is fascinating. It's so strange to me, Vinay. The Warriors have been on national TV more than any team in the last few years, right? They've had more like really good. They've had more good teams probably than any team in this era. There's still like this misconception that like, to me, Draymond and Steph feel the exact same way. They both want to kill you. Steph just does it with like a smile on his face, right? I think that's the difference. Like I think Steph feels the exact way Draymond does. He just doesn't put it out that way. But Steph is like, this is putting it nicely. Steph's an asshole. Like, and this like I'd say that in the most earnest way possible. Like I say that in the most complimentary way I can. Steph is an absolute asshole who wants to murder you. And don't get that twisted from the smiling CarMax commercials. Like that is so separate from who Steph actually is. So just like with Draymond, I think, go ahead.
I was gonna say he's got the baby face, right? Steph's got the baby face, and like that's really why I think it is. It's just Draymond is. It's just something about players who have these big personalities, and people just don't like. And this is not something new. This is beyond Lakers, Memphis. This is more like if we're discussing basketball philosophically, like fans
how we enjoy
really dislike players who have a lot of personality. It's not just basketball. Wide receivers in football are always called divas because they have so much personality, because they're one of the most skilled players like on the field and stuff like that. And it's funny to me because it's like this is one step above that. This is Dylan Brooks saying, not only am I the big dog in this, the enforcer, the big dog on this roster, I also get to shoot. Like he's throwing Draymond's thing out the window. He's like, I don't even care that Desmond Bane is a better shooter than me. If I'm wide open, I'm taking this shot, even if I am 1 for 7 or whatever. And so it's just that thought process. It's fascinating to me to see work out.
Well, it's from the same line of thinking, right? Like I remember JaVale during the title year, like we just feed him a hook shot every now and then, right? Those shots weren't going in. Like let's be real, like that's not a efficient shot. It's just like he's running, doing all the blocking, like high motor in his minutes. He's not doing that for Dallas, but I mean, like what he did for us, like those first few years, like okay, like here's JaVale, here's a post up, every. Like I think we started every game with the JaVale post up, I think, or something like that. Just to like here's a post up, like here's your offense. Now like do the defense, do the block, like be locked in on defense, help side and block shots, and we'll feed you some post ups. Remember, he'd like have the ball at the top of the 3-point line, pump fake, drive, some like wild possessions. You're like, what the hell is going on? But it's just like feeding JaVale some of these possessions gets him to do all the other stuff. Dylan Brooks is the same way. It's on a larger scale. He's taking like a lot more shot attempts to fill his appetite in that manner. But I think it comes from the same school. Shaq talks about that as well, right? If you want the big man to like do all the dirty work, you need to feed him in the post. Same thing with I think Dylan Brooks. He just has it from like I work on these step back jumpers too. I'm like right next to Desmond Bain every practice working on these. If I'm gonna defend my ass off on every of those, if I'm a guard, Luca, and all those other wing type of players every single night. If I'm gonna take that matchup, then yeah, give me some of these step back jumpers. I think the thought process is right. I just think in playoff games there should be some scalability there, but Memphis doesn't feel that way. So
yeah, let's just hope he doesn't do any self reflection before any of these games, and he continues his shot selection
right, no
when he's left
accountability.
open.
Yes,
But you were originally, before we kind of tangented off, like we were talking about,
yeah,
assignments, who's going to be guarding who, and you mentioned LeBron may
yeah,
potentially be guarding Jaren Jackson, and we might put AD or just kind of have AD guard Dylan Brooks and just kind of play off of. We did that when we played Memphis last time. We basically, like you saw many times when LeBron was assigned on Dylan or just they matched up in transition. LeBron didn't even bother to go out and look at Dylan's. There were times where he just straight up turned around, like as soon as Dylan went into his Brooks went into his shooting form. We can do that, but we just probably have to be a little bit careful because you never know how like a home court situation you might be more locked in and knock down a couple, and then when you see the one guy who can't really shoot the ball all of a sudden start making shots, then like the whole team, it's they all get superpowers from it. So it's like I think tactically, we may see that. Like that may definitely be a thing that we see out of them. What do you think about? What do you think about the bench unit that we have that's going to come out? Like they have Tyus Jones, who's probably one of the best backup point guards in the league. Should probably be starting for some other team somewhere else. Makes really good decisions. Does the same thing. He pushes in transition. Finds open guys. He's got one of the better above average, better floaters in basketball, like the same way Ja does. They run pick and roll with him. When Ja was out, they didn't miss Ja very much because they just put Tyus in and he was putting up like 20 and 10 a night himself. What do you think about how the benches sort of match up with each other in this series?
Yeah, to me, it's the backup center. Like that's where this to me this series is going to be win or lost in terms of like where our second unit rim protection or backline help comes from. Like I think that's huge. And to me, like we saw last game, Wenyan was unable to get any minutes. He played like 150. I think those second units are going to have to be manned, but we discussed this before. We've been going with Vanderbilt in the second units, kind of next to LeBron. Those have kind of been our second units. We played AD the whole first quarter. I would think to kind of switch those. I kind of like the matchups a little better with AD kind of manning the second unit. I just think we have more guards that can supplement AD than we have bigs that can supplement LeBron. But I would go like maybe Rui, LeBron as your kind of second back line. But I think that's where it is, and we're gonna have to. Darvin Ham's gonna have to punch like the right buttons every game. I don't think there's a set 8 every single time. Dennis is probably the sixth man along with Rui. But from there you have Troy Brown, Malik Beasley. We're all gonna probably try to find their way into the rotation. I'm just really interested to see where they go with that. We'll see if Mo Bamba will play. I don't think so. I don't think you throw him into this type of environment, but he's a big guy. But yeah, Memphis has a really good bench. I mean, Luke Kennard, you talked about Tyus Jones. We're very lucky that Brandon Clark's not a part of it this time, but and Santi Aldama, I think, also shoots really well for them. John Conchar comes off the bench, knocks down shots. But to me, like, would you agree with that, Vinay? I think the second unit, like, where our rim protection comes from, I think that's a huge component to me. And maybe maybe you can only survive 5 minutes without AD on the floor. But I don't think he's going to start this series playing 40 plus minutes. There's a lot of time between games, so we'll see. But I just don't think that's where they go. And to me, that's like a huge part of the game where the game can get away from you there. Memphis can push it to 50 from like 5 to like 15 really quickly in those second units. And that's my biggest concern is like, I think our starters can kind of keep up. It's the second unit when AD leaves the floor. Memphis is going to continue to punch into the paint, and can we stop them once that happens? That's my concern. But what do you think about that? Our second unit, I guess, rim protectors on the back line.
Yeah, so this is a series where I think Wenyan is actually playable. Like I think the playing game probably left a sour taste in a lot of fans' minds
Yeah.
because he was getting overwhelmed by Cat. Like Chris Finch very specifically had Cat match up with Wenyan because he wanted to try and take advantage. Like they were going to Cat every play, and Wenyan can't
Very
guard Cat.
smart.
There's a huge size difference or weight class difference, and he was
Yeah.
getting overwhelmed completely. Fortunately for us, both Brandon Clark and Steven Adams are
Adams.
out, and Aldama isn't really a post up guy like that, and so because of that, I think Wenyan is a little bit more playable. One of my larger concerns has been, and this will probably be like the next mini section that we discuss, is that if we do that Rui LeBron 4-5 thing where Rui's essentially the small ball center, we can do that because we got away with it
Yeah.
against Minnesota. But I'm really worried that we're going to be putting too much on LeBron to have to be like a rim defender because he did have to block shots against Minnesota. Like he had to rim defend against Minnesota. And Minnesota wasn't shy about attacking LeBron either. Like Mike Conley had contested jumpers over him. Like they were going after him. Like because there is value in making LeBron have to do work on defense because it's attrition, right? Like he's exhausting more energy to do stuff on the defensive end, whether it's swinging the ball around and making him have to rotate, or if it's attacking him directly and making him have to defend the rim. I think Wenyan being more playable, I would hope, in this series because of the lack of bigs that they have, is helpful in that matter. That we may be able to get more than a single shift out of him, or we may be able to get instead of 5 minutes, we get 12 minutes or maybe even more possibly if he's effective. Wenyan's still a fantastic offensive rebounder. He puts a lot of pressure on glass, runs very hard in transition offensively and defensively. So like he is like somebody who can help us out in that manner. But like, again, this is if we, thinking about lineup rotations and schematically, we do have both options, right? Like we can go to Wenyan. I don't know if we're going to play Mo. Honestly, I'll be very honest about it. I don't know if we're going to play Mo. Like we talked about this before the Minnesota when we did the Minnesota preview, the play-in preview. Like they signed Tristan Thompson with one of the extra roster spots, and
man.
Like and I keep saying it, like I'm half joking about it, but don't be surprised if Tristan plays. They didn't sign him just cause, right? They must have known, like, as much as I like to gripe about, the front office sometimes not having foresight, like they might know that they can't play Mo right now for whatever reason, right? If you think it's because of his contract conspiratorially or because he's medically not able to play, he can't get up and down the floor or whatever it is, like they won't, like they went straight to Rui in that playing game. They didn't even think about playing Mo against Cat when Wenyan was getting overwhelmed. Not even a minute. Like they would just, oh no, we're just gonna go LeBron, Rui, 4-5. That's it. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Until AD comes back. And I don't see there's nothing that I've seen since Mo has been medically cleared to make me think that he's gonna, like, maybe because they have a whole bunch of days off and they have practice, maybe Mo will be ready. But like I haven't seen anything to tell me that Mo is gonna play. So I won't be surprised if Wenyan has a bad shift. Don't be surprised if Tristan gets minutes just so Ham can see if he can use them. And it might just be something that he just throws out there, for whatever reason that he does it. Maybe we're getting blown out and he tries to give Tristan minutes. Again, Tristan's going to get practice time with us too. Like they've been saying that there's I forgot who said it. I think somebody was at the practice and said there's a stay ready group, and Tristan's part of that stay ready group. And I was just like, the moment I heard that, I was just like, okay, I don't know what that means, but stay ready sounds a little ominous to me. I assume it means like if everybody gets hurt or something like that.
Right.
That's what you're talking about. But my larger point is I think Wenyan can play in this series. I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed the same way he would have if they did have Steven Adams, just kind of manning the paint and stuff like that, because there's a huge size difference between them two as well. So that bodes well because I think LeBron won't have to do as much. Rui won't have to do as much when it comes to the defensive stuff.
Right. My only issue with that, I think so. If when is you're gonna have LeBron, Dennis, and Wenyan probably right second unit. Just it's a very shrinked floor. Not that there's a perfect solution here. I just think like the floor is gonna be shrunk so much already for a Memphis team that's already already gonna sell out to taking away the paint. That's just a really tight floor out there to work off. And then Wenyan kind of struggles with it. So I think Ja's gonna play like 40 high minutes in this series, right? That's just like, he's gonna play a ton of minutes. Tyus Jones, if he's not on the floor, Tyus Jones is. Wendy kind of struggles with like guards who can go into him physically. Like you'll see him try to be vertical, but his hands kind of come down when guys like get contact into him. And Memphis has a lot of guys who do that. Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, even when he attacks the basket, Ja obviously. Those guys really get into you when they attack the rim. So that's my kind of concern with him. And again, Vinay, if Tristan Thompson is playing any meaningful minutes, something went really wrong. Like something this season went terribly wrong. Like either we're up big or we're down a lot. And you just like, hey, Tristan, go in there and get some cardio in. I just can't imagine. There's no way he's more ready than Mo Bamba. Like that can't be right. Like he's been on ESPN the last month and a half. Mo Bamba at least was in an NBA training center, right? He was around the NBA. He was around the team. So I don't think they'll throw him in either. I agree with you. I think it's going to be Wenyan. And then if Wenyan's so in foul trouble, then maybe they try Mo Bamba, maybe to just space the floor a little bit, right? See if his three's going, see if you can get a little bit of space there. But that's where my worry, I guess, with Wenyan, which is why I think going a little bit smaller, give LeBron more of a group that can run rather than living in half court, right? A Dennis, LeBron, Wenyan, you're so tight already. Even if you throw Malik into there and probably Troy Brown's the other forward, maybe if they're going to go with a full second unit, that's just like those lineups to me are very just let's just survive. Let's trade baskets until we get AD back in, and those are lineups to me that where Memphis can run away with it, especially at home with the crowd into it. 2 bad shots in a row, you're down 6. So that's my worry there. But
yeah, and that I think again, like there's going to be a very tactical part of this. Like we also don't know if Taylor Jenkins tries to like maybe alternate his lineups a little bit to try and take advantage of, maybe he extends Ja's minutes a little bit more to try and take advantage of a lineup that doesn't have AD on there. So then that may force, this is all speculation. I don't know what they're going to do, but like maybe we have to mirror match Ja's minutes with AD's minutes. Like AD needs to be on the floor all the times that Ja is on the floor. It's not a traditional way to think about it because you would do a big for a big, but for the sake of, our rim defense, like, and taking away or trying to help neutralize what their best player is, maybe it makes more sense to mirror match AD's rotation minutes. They're not going to because they played 82 games this way. Like, so they're not going to all of a sudden change a rotation. But like maybe the extending minutes one way versus another way, that sort of thing might make more sense for them. And we can't discount the fact that they might run lineups with Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5. That's something that they can do too as well. But again, Rui might be fine to guard him, or Wenyan may be able to defend him well enough to make him less efficient versus what the other situation is. But ultimately, this sort of brings us, as we get a little bit closer to the conclusion of this episode, this brings me to the next, a big concern, or not a big concern, but something that I'm just keeping my eyes on, which is the workload on LeBron. Like we've talked a lot about a lot of small things, right? Like we talked about us needing, the Lakers needing D'Angelo Russell to be effective and not be able to get neutralized by ball pressure. Austin Reeves having to step up in that starting lineup. We've talked about Vando's defense and how we can't necessarily take him out of the starting lineup because he does do some of that blue collar defensive stuff that LeBron can't do, or we don't want him to have to expend energy doing. From there, we've talked about how we approach them schematically. We've talked about Dylan Brooks' shot selection. We just talked about transition defense. How do we tackle Ja and stuff like that and keep him out of the paint? Respecting the shooting from that team, guys like Luke Kennard, other guys, Desmond Bane, who will shoot it and push the ball on the floor. And then we just talked about the bench group and how we have to approach that too tactically and try to be smart about it. But ultimately, a lot of this stuff sort of pushes me in the direction of what my largest concerns are. And fortunately for the Lakers, we have 1-2 day breaks between games, which will give us ample enough rest. But it's LeBron's workload. And we've managed to get our 2 stars as healthy as we can, at least this season. Obviously, Bron's nursing the right foot. AD's got the bone spur issue in his foot too, as well. And the other guys, Dennis has sprained his ankle. D'Lo has somehow contracted 3 different issues in like 2 weeks that he's dealing with too as well. Like, we're not fully healthy, and I'm sure obviously Memphis straight up has guys that can't even play. Like they're not even available for the series.
Yeah.
So it's not to make any excuses, but all of this stuff incrementally adds to LeBron's workload. And we saw in the Minnesota game, if one of those things doesn't work, in the Minnesota game, it was like D'Lo was not as effective, or Austin Reeves was not as effective offensively. That can add a lot of workload to LeBron. And there were points in the game where LeBron, you could tell, was physically exhausted. And, greatest all-time player, world-class athlete, spends tons of money to take care of his body, even at this age. And like, you can tell that the wear and tear really catches up to him. And I think teams are, a team like Memphis is going to try to keep the pressure on him to have to constantly expend energy. Like, all these small things incrementally will lead to him being more exhausted at the end of games. And we have to really try to get LeBron a chance to be fresh in those fourth quarters where he can really dominate. I'm worried about that, because I'm worried that if everybody doesn't come locked in with what their roles and their responsibilities are going to be, not that LeBron's going to get hurt. I think he's very aware of how to take care of himself, but like, I'm worried that he won't have legs in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? He's got Dylan Brooks pressuring him the entire game, or whoever they assign on him the entire game. So I'm worried about that. And the reason why I'm worried about that is because I just saw it happen in the Minnesota game. Like, we weren't prepared for that game the way that we should have been. And you brought up a great point. We played a bunch of meaningless games, and they sort of had a meaningless attitude going into that Minnesota game. And all of this stuff we've talked about, tactical and thematic, like, we can't have that happen in this Memphis series, because ultimately it could result in our stars being too fatigued to finish some of these games, or like to be effective at the end of the games. So is that a concern of yours? Is that something that you've thought about?
Oh yeah.
What do you think about like that concern? Do you think it's valid?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, this guy just came back, I mean, from a foot injury, 8 games ago. Obviously went to the LeBron James of feet or whatever, but I mean, I think he was still recommended surgery. I don't think that's going to be healed. So definitely, I think those things are tied together though, Vinay. I think our guard play is kind of tied to the workload on LeBron, and I think I want him to. I know it's a tough ask, but I think like his defensive engagement, I think, is such a key to this series as well. I don't think this is a series like this is why I'm a little bit worried as well with him on Dylan Brooks, right? I think putting LeBron on Dylan Brooks is kind of a license to not to disengage, but kind of, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be locked in when you're guarding Dylan Brooks, or if you're guarding Russell Westbrook, or you're guarding whoever, right? It's kind of you're more in the roaming type of scenario. And I think that just like, I don't really like that in terms of where you would put LeBron in that scenario. But yeah, I think that's one of my concerns as well. And I think you have to kind of lessen his load on offense. As again, Austin and D'Lo are good enough on ball shot creators, mainly for themselves, but that's kind of where you want them. If you're going to start 2 on ball guards next to LeBron, give them some usage, right? Let them attack, let them score, so LeBron doesn't have to set them up every time. And then in the fourth quarter, once that comes, then yeah, you're going to have LeBron walk it up every single time, orchestrating every single person on the floor, orchestrating where 9 other guys are going to be, right? His guys, and where the defense should be in those places. And I think that's where you can kind of get you can really take over with that. But I think like throughout the game, you want his offensive load to not be as high as it is. And yeah, he's going to be exhausted. Hopefully with this series, there's a lot more days in between. I said before, it was like 8 games in 14 days. I mean, that's just an absurd amount, especially when you throw on the pressure pack of these games. Now, the opponents weren't great, but still, you need to win every single one of those just to be in the position you are. And then obviously closing out with that tough Memphis game. But yeah, hopefully with the days off, he can kind of rehab a little bit better. He can, he's able to recover better after these nights. And I think they have like 2 days in between game 1 and game 2 as well. So it's just a huge kind of break there. And I think even between game 2 and game 3, there's a nice little break. So he should be a little bit more well rested. I don't think they're ever going to be 100%. I don't think AD is going to be 100%, but I think in Minnesota, at least in the second half, he looked physically able. I know he was tired, but hit a huge jump shot at the end, created shots at the rim, just to get us over the hump, especially in overtime as well, being able to get us over that hump. And I think that showed to me like physically he could still get to that. Now, will it be enough to beat Memphis? We'll see. But I think like if LeBron can at least get to that, I trust his mind to be able to like work out the gaps in between there against this Memphis team. So we'll see. But that's definitely a concern, and that's to me where D'Lo and Austin and even Dennis have to come and play here and take some of that usage for him. If he's creating Vinay every time against Dylan Brooks, like that's too much. That's too much to wear on you. Brooks is too physical, especially if he's not in foul trouble. Just too physical to have him attack him for his 36 minutes a night. Like that's a lot of wear and tear on LeBron. So hopefully you can have other guys contribute there to where LeBron can take over in the fourth and still contribute defensively throughout. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely in agreement. I think like you have to find ways to incrementally reduce that load for LeBron. Like you can't ask him to be our best playmaker and be our scorer, like our primary rim attacking threat.
Yeah.
And all that. Like you have to help him out in some capacity. So that's perfect. I think that concern and the way you kind of wrapped it up is perfect, because that's going to lead to what is, I think, our final probably our final thing that we'll discuss, which is the one guy that we haven't discussed this entire episode, surprisingly, and that's Anthony Davis. Memphis is going to be without Steven Adams, who's a physical bruiser. They're going to be without Brandon Clark, who's not a physical bruiser, but he's a quick, speedy guy and super athlete.
Yeah.
They still do have Jaren Jackson, who's fantastic. They do have Xavier Tillman, who's tough as hell, but he's 6'7", but he's a tough as hell. They play him at center and have Jaren Jackson kind of play off of him and help him out in the paint. The best way for the Lakers to really dictate everything that goes on with this series is, in my opinion, is to constantly feed Anthony Davis as much as possible and get as many easy shots in the paint as they can. And we know it's going to be a very difficult task. And we know that their number one goal is Desmond Bain has said it. Like their number one goal is to make sure that Anthony Davis doesn't get off, because he's their biggest priority. But that is what we have to do. And I shared the stats earlier today. Like in the fourth quarter, Minnesota was like 2 of 14. The non-Anthony Davis Lakers were 3 of 15, and Anthony Davis was 3 for 5. And when I saw that, granted it did go into overtime, I was just like, maybe we didn't give him enough shots. Like he should have probably gotten the ball a little bit more, considering how good he is and kind of considering the exhaustion level that LeBron had. Now, obviously, LeBron will dictate at the end of games how he wants to approach those possessions and stuff like that. But when Anthony Davis is on the floor, we have to really try to get the ball to him. Like, I understand that, some of our guys don't want to risk turnovers and stuff like that. That was a thing that drove Lakers fans nuts for a season and a half when it came to Russ, because he used to force passes to AD. And when AD was ready for them, it looked great. AD would have 50-20 games, you know what I mean? But, we can't be selective with feeding AD. Like we have to feed him constantly. There was a play in the Minnesota game where Dennis used AD's screen and he threw actually a terrible bounce pass to AD. He tried to set up AD. He threw a terrible bounce pass. It was so bad that AD had to actually go clear out a Minnesota player, basically out of bounds, and then grab it with the free hand that he had. And he ended up finishing it. He basically saves that sort of play that could have very easily been a turnover. But that doesn't mean we don't give it to him. And I understand that those left isolation blocks lead to double teams, and he has to get the ball out. That's something that he's gotten better at, but he's not that great at. But that doesn't mean we don't look for him in pick and roll. That doesn't mean we don't run pick and pop for him at the free throw line and stuff like that. That if we're going to make everybody else's life easier, it has to be through AD. And we are fortunate that Memphis doesn't have two important rotation bigs that they normally like to play. So we can't ignore that opportunity that we have. What do you think about that? Does everything, for me, everything starts and ends with him. And so, like,
Yeah,
what do you
for
think
sure.
about that? What do you think about that idea?
Well, yeah. So like next up on my notes as well, I was gonna ask you too. Is I think so. It's been talked about, but Jaren Jackson Jr.'s foul trouble, right? That's kind of the overarching kind of theme. If you listen to national media talk about this Lakers Grizzlies matchup, is Jaren Jackson Jr.'s foul trouble, and I think AD is like at the heart of that, right? If you can get that's kind of the key, right, to unlocking against Memphis. Their defense is so good when he's out there, but if you can get him similarly to the way that you can kind of get Towns into foul trouble, both of the guys are uh Towns obviously not the defender Jaren Jackson is, but like they're both them kind of undisciplined in the way where when they have 3 or 4, they'll still defend kind of the same way and pick up that fifth or pick up that fourth. And that's where I think AD's ability to be aggressive, similar in how I said where D'Lo needs to get shots up. AD needs to get shots up. Like that mid-range shot, it's going in a little bit more. And it's not just about the mid-range shot. I think it just gets him in rhythm, him touching the basketball. And it's going to have to be quick decisions. Memphis is really good at helping, digging down on the post player and then recovering out to their man. Those kickouts need to be quick. That skip pass needs to be quick. But if he's like already catching it down low in the paint, I'd like him to just go up with some of those. He's good enough in the floater range. And again, Jaren Jackson's going to be help side trying to take away the rim. But if you can get into that little mid post there, he has a size advantage over Tillman and then whoever else is on him other than probably Jaren Jackson. You can really get to that mid post kind of area and punish them inside. And again, open that up, get them in foul trouble. And that's where the Lakers live, right? They get more free throws than the other team. That's kind of been nationalized as well, but that's by design. AD is a big part of that. He shot 13 free throws the last time we played them in Memphis. That was obviously without LeBron and D'Lo. And so I think in those screen roll games, it's going to be a little bit tougher to kind of create. But if you can get him getting downhill, especially LeBron and AD like to run that like empty side stuff where it's just them on the corners, you get him going down that way, get him attacking the basket, get him downhill, and just feeling the basketball. I don't want 2 quarters to go by or 1 quarter to go by, Vinay, where like it's like, oh, AD had 1 shot in that quarter. Like no, like get him touches, get him going to the rim, get him going to the line, and I think you can kind of get the fruit of that. And AD, though, the playoff numbers kind of bear this out as well. He's a big time playoff scorer along with the defense that he brings in. They're gonna need that. You're gonna need like 25 plus from him a night to beat this Memphis team. I think the role players are gonna have to come in as well, but Memphis is just really solid defensively. You need to break that with your superstar, and that starts with AD. And that's another thing that connects to the LeBron thing. AD should be the primary option here. LeBron's going to be flanked by these wings. We'll see if they throw Jaren Jackson. I don't think they want Jaren Jackson as the primary guy on AD for too long because they don't really have a backup center. So I expect other guys to be on him, and AD should cook those lineups. And he did that in Memphis last time. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think he had like 35 or 37 or something in Memphis in a game we lost, where obviously Ja went off as well. But I think like this is a matchup where he can really take over with no Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark, and only Jaren Jackson really throw on him. This is a matchup he should dominate, Vinay.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I think, I think he sets the tone. I think as he dominates the paint on both ends, it will dictate. Like a lot of people like Draymond did this thing. So Draymond picked the Lakers to beat the Grizzlies, and he did it on his podcast, right?
Of course he did.
But his entire thing was like the thing that he said is like, well, LeBron's going to control the tempo and he's going to do things at his pace and stuff like that. Which is like, I think most LeBron fans would tell you the same thing. Like they'll say, well, LeBron plays at his own pace in the playoffs. He gets to dictate. He's one of the best, if not the best in the league at doing this. And like, that's fine. Like, I'm not saying that he can't do that, but I don't think he's the guy who's going to decide what our tempo is going to be. AD's effectiveness in the paint is going to decide what the tempo of those games is going to be. If he's not getting the ball, getting to the rim, getting easy shots, making them have to take the ball out off of every made layup or made dunk or whatever it is that he's doing in the paint, then the game won't be slow. It won't be to the pace that we want. Like just because we come down and we start making a bunch of threes, like that doesn't mean Memphis is going to slow down. They'll be like, great, this is a shootout. Let's get into a shootout. And that might not be a game that the Lakers can win. So it has to be getting their bigs in foul trouble. It has to be, Dylan Brooks leaving LeBron to come and help against Xavier Tillman if AD gets him, like on a quick drop pass or a quick entry pass or something like that on offense or something. Like it has to be like AD has to attract attention. It can't be a double that they're ready to send to him. It has to be a double that they're not ready to send to him because he's being so effective. And I think that's why I think everything starts and ends with him because his effectiveness in the paint is and then we know he's a phenomenal defensive player and stuff like that. We saw that even against the Minnesota game. Forces Anthony Edwards to give up the ball, then runs all the way back down in the paint, and then defends Taurean Prince's layup and blocks Taurean Prince's layup into a shot clock violation or something like that, I think is what it was. But it's like, so I'm not worried about him defensively, but we need to utilize what he is offensively. And I would say he's looked really good in the post, even in traffic. Like he's done a really nice job with multiple bodies, finishing strong or drawing fouls, not just immediately falling to the ground and setting up a 5-on-4 the other way. Like he's been staying upright and doing a really good job finishing. We have to do it. Like it has to start with him. And part of what you said, which was perfect, is like AD does take pride defensively, the same way Dylan Brooks does, the same way Draymond does, the same way JaVale did. And AD is a big man for the Lakers, which means that you have to keep them engaged offensively. He may not necessarily, this is something that I think Laker fans have said, like AD doesn't call for the ball enough. He may not, that may not be in his nature. You know what I mean? Like, even though he's a superstar, he says whatever he says, and he has, the numbers to back it up. Sometimes that's just not in him. That's not his mentality. Yeah. He doesn't want to interrupt the flow of whatever he thinks is going on. So the Lakers have to force the issue. We know LeBron will do it. If LeBron sees the matchup for him, he's going to say, get in the post, I'm getting it to you. But the rest of the Lakers have to do the same. They have to always know when he's available and try to find easy angles for him, especially if they're not going to be comfortable. If D'Lo is not going to be comfortable taking a contested layup, look for AD. Pick up the ball and look and see where he is and give it to him for the jumper or let him, re-screen or something like that, whatever it may be. So we've touched a lot of topics, but I honestly think it starts and begins with him. Like, you have any other thoughts?
Oh yeah. So remember, they're not the same, and this Houston team didn't have a Jaren Jackson Jr. But Memphis is very comfortable switching a lot of their guards onto bigs, right? They have big, sturdy guards like Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks. They'll switch a lot of those. AD cooked those. I mean, Houston did similar things. They tried to switch James Harden, Daniel House, PJ Tucker was kind of the main option, right? And AD just shot right over those guys. I think this is that type of series as well. Again, I don't think they want Jaren Jackson Jr. on him. Xavier Tillman, I didn't look up the height. He's more of a sturdy guy as well. I don't think he's like a 7-footer. I think he's like a 6'9", 6'10" guy.
He's not even 6'10". I think he's 6'7". When I checked the NBA site, he's listed as 6'7". So he's not 6'7", but he's like a big body. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's a guy that, AD should be able to outskill him, right? Like you don't have to go through that guy, but you shoot over the top of those kind of guys. That's where all the jab step, the little pretty turnaround, those all come in after he's gotten the touch. I like him bringing the ball up as well, Vinay. Some people don't like that. I like when he's like, all right, I'm just going to push this. I'm going to push this. It's going to flow right into a DHO, and we go into a little bit earlier transition, right? A step-up screen with him and D'Lo or him and Austin. I think that's stuff that, like, he can do anytime. If they're not going to have Jaren Jackson Jr. on him, no one else should stand a chance once he catches it down low. Yeah, they can send two, but if he's deep enough and he can get post position, there's games where AD can just dominate a game and there's nothing the other team can really do about it. We saw that a little bit in Chicago, in Minnesota, right? You had Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns at his mercy. Like, they have no chance. He's too skilled. You can get by them. And I think Memphis, you can kind of do similar things, especially without Adams. And with them, they're going to try to have Jackson on Vanderbilt. That's where I think AD kind of shoot over these guys, and they switch a lot of those big to guard, big to wing screens in the paint. Lakers set a lot of cross screens for AD when he tries to get in the post, and that's where Memphis will switch a lot of those. And to me, you got to punch those. Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, all those guys underneath. You should be able to shoot over the top. AD should be at like 20 to 25 attempts a game, like that. Like, he should look to at least shoot that many times. There's no reason to have a 4 for 10 game. You didn't try, like, not you didn't try, but you weren't engaged offensively enough if you're 4 for 10, in my opinion, for Anthony Davis. No matter what the doubles are, what the screen coverages are, like, you should be able to get shots up in this series. And then you're right. I think he's the key. He's the fulcrum of whatever we do. LeBron's going to do his thing. But Anthony Davis being the superstar, that's when the talent overloads, right? You have two superstars going at their peak versus this Memphis team who's really good, but you want to overload them with that talent. And I think that's how you win. That's how you steal at least one of these games in Memphis.
Yeah, I think everything you said is accurate. Like, it's just him recognizing who he has on him, how he can attack them. That little short mid range, not the long two area, but the one that's a little bit below the free throw line. That mid range jumper that he's had has looked really nice as of late. Probably because he doesn't have to use his lower body as much to take that jump shot.
Yeah,
he can just kind of take it, and like, he'll get those shots. Like, Tillman is not going to block that shot, and Jaren Jackson may not get over in time to block that shot. And Jaren Jackson may have been instructed when he goes to the rim or dribbles the ball on the floor, that's when you go in double. So being able to take those shots with confidence, make those shots with confidence will be a big deal. And so I'm on board with you in that matter. Like, I don't want to see any games where he takes like less than, you said 10, but I don't want to see any games where he takes like less than 15 shots. Like, he should be in the 20s.
Oh, yeah.
Like, him and LeBron should be in the 20s. Efficiency be damned. Like, he should be in the 20s like every game in shot attempts at the minimum if the Lakers are going to be successful. I think they know that. I think he and LeBron know that they have to set the tone for the rest of the guys because this team is still kind of figuring itself out. So, and then they know that Adams is out and Clark is out. So I would imagine that they're being coached into AD's being coached to be aggressive in that regards. So Raj, well, actually, before I sort of wrap some of this stuff up, was there anything that we didn't cover? Because I feel like we covered a ton of stuff.
I think we did cover everything. I think the last few things was, I think we're gonna do a lot of this. We didn't see it against Minnesota, but I think the D'Lo, Austin, Schroeder, I think we're gonna see a lot of that next to LeBron and AD. And then I'm just wondering. So we touched a little bit on it, but would you go after Jack? Like, let's say Jackson picks up 2 fouls. Would you kind of just throw away your offense and kind of go and attack him? Would that be like your strategy there? Like, would you go and just change your offense to hunting him? Because you can get in trouble sometimes with that too, right? Hunting fouls on another player. I'm just interested to see where they go with that. But I think that's such a huge part of this series. It's very similar to Minnesota, who came in without a backup center. You get Towns out of the game, you've kind of really leveraged like your situation. I think Jackson's the same way with Memphis, but yeah, I think that was the last thing I had. It was like, how much would you go at him? Would you leverage against your own offense and just kind of throw that away and just go and try to get fouls on him? And I think it's a little bit tougher. Jackson is a legit good defender. I think he can kind of sway against that. But I'm just wondering, like, would you go after that, or is that something that you're like, just let that happen in the flow? He's gonna get fouls anyway, kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think he's a pretty hyper. Like you said it before, like he plays like as if he always has 0 fouls at all times, and it actually gets him in trouble. That's why he racks up so many fouls.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go after him specifically unless it's like end game situation or something like that. And then in that case, LeBron's probably the one who's trying to pick the matchup that he wants. So I wouldn't, as long as it doesn't deviate from your normal game plan, I wouldn't go after him, because the refs also had to do that weird thing where it's like when they kind of know that a guy's in foul trouble, so they don't want to call the foul, especially if they know that's like sort of the star player or in a very important player on the opposing team. But if it happened organically, I wouldn't be opposed to it. He himself kind of takes really dumb fouls at times. So like, if it happens in an organic fashion and he gets himself in foul trouble, great. Like that worked out greatly for us. But I wouldn't want to deviate too far from like what we want to do offensively. Like, I don't want like all of a sudden, we were in the flow of things, and now all of a sudden like Dennis is trying to hunt a mismatch on Jaren to attack him, try to get him, like, and Dennis is good at it, but we've seen the way the refs call some of these games. Like, the first half maybe no calls at all, and then the second half all of a sudden it's a freaking foul fest. So I don't know what it is, but the last thing I want is we're trying to repeatedly score on Jaren Jackson, missing shots because of it, and now we've allowed them to take momentum back from us, and now they've seen a couple of shots go through, and we didn't accomplish whatever our initial goal was. But I mean, I would have been like, Taylor Jenkins is a very good coach. Memphis has one of the better scouting teams departments. They have like 40 people listed as scouts. If you guys ever go check their Real GM, go to Real GM and go look and see how many people the Memphis Grizzlies employ as part of like their scouting staff or like part of their coaching staff. They have a shit ton of scouts and a shit ton of people that are like responsible to help. I don't know how much they contribute, but like they contribute. So I think they probably also know that like Jaren may have, if we do have a situation where Jaren gets into foul trouble, how are we going to approach that, knowing that these guys are out? And so I would imagine like they'll be prepared for it. But to answer your original question, like I wouldn't deviate too far from whatever. Stick with what's working, and if he's organically getting into foul trouble because of it, just keep doing that. Like don't pick on anybody in that regards.
Right. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that as well. I just think like that's such a huge hammer play. Like if you can get him out of the game, you're probably in a huge advantageous situation because their backups are really, it gets really tight from there. I think Santi Aldama we talked about before, Xavier Tillman, obviously, it's another big man they'll play, and you just listed his height at like 6'7". So I think that just puts you in a really good position, but you don't want to be forcing it. I can already see it though, the Dennis Schroeder drive and just swat it out of bounds by Jaren Jackson Jr. because they're just not going to give him the call. And then again, last thing, but Austin Reeves, interested to see if he gets the calls in this one, or is this just, have we just migrated to playoff basketball where these calls are just immediately legislated out? I'm so fascinated by that because the Lakers have lived on the line, and it's been, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say if they don't get that free throw advantage, like that means that the players got to play. Like our skilled position guys got to make their shots. Like we're not gonna win the advantage at the free throw line. I mean, the Austin Reeves free throw experience became a 2-3 night debacle on Twitter, and now he just doesn't get the calls, which is fine. Maybe some of those 50-50 ones he doesn't get anymore. But I expect him to adjust. Like I think like now he won't hunt the contact. He'll just go straight up, which is fine by me because he's still a tremendous shooter. So I know he's going to make them. But yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Most definitely. Yeah. Should be a very exciting game one here on Sunday.
Yeah. So, obviously game one is on Sunday. Me and Raj will figure out what our sort of broadcast schedule is going to be. Maybe we'll do a post game that evening so that we can have some thoughts fresh in our minds, especially since we'll have a couple of days break. I'm sure win or lose, it'll be pandemonium on Lakers Twitter via Spaces and whatnot, and people will be giving their extreme reactions, win or lose, whatever happens with the Lakers and how they win and how they lose. But it'll be good. But Raj, as always, this was an awesome episode of Lakers Detailed.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of stuff on the stream. So I want to thank you as always. These are always great chats. I feel like we always bounce really good ideas. And for all the folks that tuned in on the live stream, or if you tuned in on the Twitter space itself, we both appreciate you, everybody joining in and listening to us, listening to us talk about Lakers basketball. All the folks in the YouTube chat that you guys sent your chats, we see all of them. Sorry we weren't able to get to all of them. But we appreciate all the folks that listen in on Lakers basketball. And yeah, Lakers got a game on Sunday. We'll see how the results go. And then we'll let you know our thoughts once we get something on the schedule. If you follow Raj, you can follow me. You can follow the Radio KBE Twitter account so you guys get the updates for whenever the next broadcast comes out. That's really all you got to do. And if nothing else, we appreciate you guys, and we hope you have a good evening or a good day whenever you end up seeing this or hearing this. You guys take it easy. We'll see you in the next one.
Yep. Peace.